Hey there, everybody. So there's a big question going around online, and it's come because we've seen a lot of people like a Camera Luna, a Melissa Griffin, even a little bit of the Screw the 9 to 5, and many other big-time people have been actually shutting down or restarting their large Facebook groups. And so it's got everybody wondering, are Facebook groups dying, or is it just a big scare or trend? And then how will you know if it's worth it to keep yours open? And that's some of what we'll talk about today on Pay It Forward Marketing, where this is the show that we believe that good marketing is about being a good servant. The greatest tool for conversion is compassion, and the best way to get paid in your business is to generously pay it forward. I'm your host, Kate Boyd, and I'm really excited to introduce to you two of my dear friends, business strategist and success coach, Lacey Craig, and business mentor and coach, Anna Frandsen, to talk all about the future of Facebook groups. Welcome, guys. Thanks for joining me.
Thank you. Thank you for having us.
Thank you.
And yeah, and of course, if you're here, please let us know. Say hi. Tell us if you have a Facebook group or if you've been thinking of starting one, so that we can best share our wisdom with you today. So Facebook groups, at least, so I've been in online business for 3 years or so, and Facebook groups weren't really a thing when I started. Like, it was sort of a new, or they were around, but it was mostly like really niche interests or like local groups and things like that. So I think it's really interesting to have seen the evolution of them between like when I started my first business and when I started my second business, like 18 months ago. It was very different. Facebook groups became the thing. And so as we've seen sort of the evolution of them, I'm curious how each of you first encountered Facebook groups. Lacey, you want to go first?
Sure, go ahead.
Direct.
I truly don't remember. Like, I really have thought about this and have like tried to think about it, and I just genuinely don't remember. Like, I know, I'm sure there was like some targeted ad or something, right? So like I had my own business at that time, like totally outside of the like bubble of like the online entrepreneur world, but I had an online business. So I'm sure I was doing some type of Google search or something that had to do with it and got drawn in, but I like really don't even remember like my first introduction. So I think it was kind of organic, I would imagine, just in the sense of like I was doing the online business thing and found this space that catered to it.
It's so funny that you mentioned that, because I'm pretty sure that it's accurate to say that my first like big entrepreneurial Facebook group was Louisa Joe's Facebook group, which is so ironic because I actually get to interview her next week.
That's awesome.
Which I'm looking forward to. But like I hadn't like found all the groups. I literally just found hers. And then like Lisa Eaton, who both of you know and love. But it actually took me a while before I realized like, oh, like there are a ton of Facebook groups. And like I even started for life coaching, like my little challenge group, before I realized that, oh my gosh, like this is like a thing.
Yeah, I'd say mine was kind of similar. I feel like the only groups that I was a part of originally were part of paid programs. They were like bonuses for paid programs. And I remember just always being overwhelmed by them then, that I always left them because I never, like, I was just like, I just wanted the course. I don't need all of this, like, people and chatter and all these things. And then it was like, as I started my second business, catering to online entrepreneurs, it was like, oh, this is like a real place that, like, you join and I was getting a lot out of them. I don't remember which was my first group, but I know that I sort of jumped in quite a few just to check out what it was. And hi to everybody who's here, Holly, Bree, Nikki, glad you guys are joining us, Catherine. So I remember starting mine, and I actually resisted starting mine for a while, but then I did. But I'm curious what made you guys, as you shifted into your businesses, why did you start your group? And Anna, why don't you go first?
Yeah, so funny. When I was really diving into life coaching, I decided like one of my friends like was a Beachbody coach, and I had never like been in her group before, but she was telling me how it was a great way for her to like in her business, like build relationships. And I'd never been a part of an MLM, but I was like, oh, that sounds like a great idea. And so I basically started like a temporary pop-up group for my life coaching business. And we did like a 5-day self-care challenge. And at that point, I don't even know that I knew what I was going to sell at the end, but I was like, this sounds like a great idea. So I literally got 80 people in the group. We did this like challenge. And then at the end, I ended up like selling a group program for my life coaching. But that was my first experience, is just this like little pop-up group of like, hey, let's gather all these people together and see if they're like interested in what I have to offer.
Love it. So Kate, you know, you and I totally share a love for all things servant leadership, right? Mm-hmm. So like, when I came into this space, like it was more just like about like, who are my people and who am I going to serve and how am I going to talk to them? And it just seemed like the most obvious way for me to do that, right? Is like actually be of service and like start a group that was talking about and catering to the things that they wanted and wanted to hear more about. So like, it just seemed like the most obvious step for me to do that. And so that was like one of the first things I did, was open a group and just start connecting with people.
Yeah. So what role up to this point have those groups played in your businesses? Like, what has that looked like and how has that contributed to your business overall?
For me, I'm like, are we going to take turns?
Yeah.
Right. For me, like it's played a huge role. And it's really just been the format and the venue through which I built relationships in my business. And I assume that like, I'm sure we'll get to this, but like, I don't think Facebook groups are the only way, but at least for me and my business, something I do feel like is a non-negotiable is relationships. And so for me, it was just the venue and continues to be the venue through which I build a relationship. I can't even remember. What was your original question? Oh, what role has it played? Mm-hmm. So for me, it's just been from the beginning and continues to be a way for me to build relationships with people, not just like people that will become clients, but just like peers and friends in the industry. Like all my friends that have like been in masterminds, like now hang out in my group. And it's been a way to make money, but it's also been a way for me to not burn out and actually keep faith in the coaching industry, because it's just been connection, which for me is everything.
I love it.
Yeah. I mean, I obviously agree so much with that. Like, I really think that like we can like overcomplicate business in like 100 different ways. But like at the end of the day, it's about one thing, which is creating relationships with other humans, especially in a service-based business. Right. So like, it is the cornerstone of how I do that. And certainly there are many other ways that I do that. But for me, like having a community of people that are like-minded and working toward the same goal, like there's just no better way to build relationships. So I think that like it's often like an entry point to a funnel or to working with me or to creating deeper and deeper relationships with other people, or like Anna said, whether that's a client or a collaborator or a friend or whatever. But for me, like this is like the entry point that a lot of people come in to get to know me through and to build a relationship with me through. I also feel like for me, it really serves as that place where I just get to be like all of me in whatever way feels good, right? So like if I want to do a live stream, like dressed up and looking nice and having a serious business conversation, great. If I want to do one like sitting, you know, in the grass in my workout clothes, that's fine too. Like it's just provided this like medium that feels safe and like comfortable, and like it's as much of a community for me as it is a community for everybody there. So like I just try to show up and treat it like that. And I think when you do, it gives back to you, right? And like then your people show up and treat it like that too. And so what I find is that it's just a really valuable tool to keep building those relationships and to keep pouring in and like being poured into.
Yeah. And I would say that that is sort of, I think that's why Facebook groups have worked for people, is because they facilitate a place for people to connect, whether that's with the leader of the group or with each other. And I think that's what's been, and I think that's especially specifically for service providers, like that's really, really important, because I know, and it took me a long time coming from like a non-service provider like business before to sort of like understand that and like step into, because before for me it was like all about content and just like getting people out there, and I think that's certainly a piece of the puzzle, and it's a way to build relationships, but it's not the only, like you can actually just have relationships with people, which felt weird at first, but it totally became something that, you know, was more fun and freeing and all of that as well. And it even sort of became, and I would say over the last year, year and a half, at least the last year or so, it was really like the go-to strategy for a lot of people. I know that I saw countless ads, countless freebies for things like how to, you know, make money using Facebook groups and how to do this and how to be Facebook group famous and all of these different things. But now it seems like, or, you know, how to start your own group and make lots of money. And so, but now we're starting to sort of, you're seeing a little bit of a shift with everybody either closing or like reevaluating like what it looks like. So I'm curious what you guys think or what you've seen as group owners, you know, who are in other people's groups too. What do you feel like has sort of made that shift start to happen? Like what's happening in the industry, what's happening in this medium that is making people go, maybe this isn't working like it did, or something? Like, why are people shifting that way? Anna?
Oh, no. Yeah, you're fine. I think like two things. I think like in the online industry, like things go in trends, right? And I think honestly, when I opened my business Facebook group a year ago, I would say like the trend was already over. Like, I feel like by that point it was like, I don't know, like they have like different years, right? And I feel like last year was like almost like sales funnel stuff. And I feel like definitely there are trends in the online, in the online industry. But I feel like probably the shift that we're seeing, which is almost like a different issue than why are people with 80,000 member groups shutting it down, but is that Facebook is changing, right? Like it looks like they're headed towards being able to do paid ads towards our groups. And so with that, there probably will be shifts and changes. For me, it doesn't affect how I'm showing up in my community. But I feel like anytime there's change, there's fear. And for me, I've been enjoying the new features so far as like being able to schedule posts like directly in our group, being able to vet members with questions. But like, honestly, I'm just going to have to evaluate like at every chapter along the way, are Facebook groups still working for me? And right now I feel like they are. And I was telling Lacey this morning, like even if my Facebook group got shut down today, would I start a new one? I would, because it still remains a good strategy for me. Will it in 90 years? Not 90 years, sorry. Will it in 9 years? I'm not sure. Definitely not in 90 years. Would I have 80,000 people in my group? If I do, no. And I actually hope it doesn't get to be that size, but all I can do is like evaluate, is it working for me like right now?
Love that. Yeah, so true. Like I'm totally of a similar mindset in the sense that I think like we're going through a shift much like business pages did, right? Where like your business page was like showing up in news feeds and getting prioritized in the algorithm. And then all of a sudden that changed and it was like this huge thing. And people were like, forget business pages. But now everybody's realizing like, oh, you actually most definitely still need a business page. And there's a really smart way to run that and monetize that. And it just looks different than it used to. And for me, Facebook groups are the exact same thing. They're changing algorithms. They're going to monetize them. Facebook just did a whole community summit. Communities aren't going away. They are more committed now than ever to communities. It's just going to look different. But like with anything, it works if you work it and it works if you're adaptable, right? So like if you're trying to do it the old way where you just assume that every post you make is going to show up in somebody's newsfeed and they're going to bang down your door to get in your group, like it's not that anymore, right? So I think what happens is kind of like Anna said, like we're always looking for that magic pill, that fast thing. And like our groups, that frankly, I don't think they were ever that. Like I always think they've taken a lot of like care and cultivation, and the people that have done well with them have always worked them, like we're saying, right? So like I don't think any of that's changing. It's just like, how are we adapting to what's changing in like the structure, the algorithms, all of that. And if groups feel good to you, you're going to find a way to make them feel good to you as this evolution occurs. If they didn't feel good to you, you're going to be like, heck yeah, this is a great way for me not to have a group. And that's fine too. It's just figuring out like, where are you going to put your energy and effort into your business? Because there's no magic pill no matter what, right?
Yeah, I think that's a good point, is that far too many people are looking for the next big thing, or the thing that, you know, will seemingly save their business and help them make all the money that they want to and make their dreams come true. But the truth is that anything can be used that way if you work it the right way. Like, I personally actually made the choice to step out of my Facebook group that I had run for a year and a half. It just felt like, as well, I had personally shifted in my business perspective, but also just, you know, but still respecting the community that I built there. I actually turned it over to some people who were part of the community to lead it however they want to, because I knew that it was a special place and wanted to keep that around for people and the perspective that it had, but knew that there was a point at which, like, it wasn't really helping my business. It wasn't full of the people who I now work with, and therefore became a lot harder to justify me spending my time in pursuing that in a business perspective. Now, I still pop in there and communicate with people, but it as like a community thing, as a community member, but I don't necessarily, like, it didn't, I think there was a point at which the evaluation that I did was like, oh, well, maybe if I'm actually making, you know, more money or getting more calls or things like that from these other platforms, and I'm actually, it would be better if I focus on those places first. And so I'm curious, you guys both mentioned like evaluating and adapting. Like, how often do you check in on that and evaluate that for your business and your group and what's happening?
Yeah, for me, it's not like a regimented, like every 2 weeks or every year or whatever. Though I guess there are times where like I'll like go to a coffee shop specifically for reflection in my business. But I would say like it's just one of the many elements that I'm always reflecting, right? Like what's working, what's not working, what needs to shift. And so, yeah, I wouldn't say that I have like a specific thing, but I would say that over time I have like shifted things in my Facebook group as I felt like, you know, like if it's feeling off or different, like what do I need so that I can still show up? Because I feel like as long as I have my Facebook group, I really need to be showing up in it. And so what do I need to do to feel good about that? So more recently, in the past few months, I've had my VA be a more active part of like supporting me in approving denying group members and like helping people opt in and all the like stuff, right? And releasing that has freed me up to enjoy my Facebook group more and like answer the questions and do all the things. And so I think evaluating just looks like, okay, is it feeling off? If it is the problem fixable? And it may not be, right? It may be like, nope, this isn't working. But usually for me, it's just a small tweak that I need to give myself permission to do so that it continues to work for me.
Yeah, I would say like I don't necessarily have like a regimented process either. I mean, but for me, it's kind of like daily, right? In the sense of like, it's my job as a CEO and business owner to be looking at what's working, what feels good, and what doesn't work pretty much like every day, right? So like, it doesn't mean I'm making a decision to keep it or not keep it every day, but I'm like always available to look for what's happening and look for patterns and see what's going on. And like, there's no part of me that feels like this is going to shift for me anytime soon. Like, am I available for it too? If it does, certainly, but I haven't seen any changes at this time that like make me feel like it's something I need to be like watching like a hawk and like ready to shift in a moment's notice. Like, I'm all in. This is like working for me. Like, I love my community. It makes me feel good. And like, that's all I need to know right now. Right. Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I love that. And that makes me bring another question, which is just like, what do you feel like with different levels of groups, opening, closing, all of those things, y'all for the last year and 2 years since you've both had your businesses, like, your groups have both grown a lot or, you know, have a lot of, I think your two groups are some of the two that I see a lot like, oh, I'm just so glad we have this space. I'm so glad we have this thing. And I see that a lot happen. And so I'm curious what you think facilitates that about maybe what you do or how you look at it or how you approach it? Like, what makes your groups different than a lot of the other groups out there that you feel like has made your group a special place for you and your business and all the people that are a part of it?
I love that question, because when I first decided last year to open my big Facebook group, which wasn't big at the time, right? I almost didn't, because there was one group in particular where I was like, why isn't that person's group working? It's been open. And so I think like we always notice that, right? Like, why are some groups working and why aren't others? And I don't know exactly. I would say like one of the things that I think has helped me succeed is that like I've showed up to serve from like day one. Like literally when I had 10 people in my group, I was like, this is amazing. I love being here. And I showed up and I supported, and I didn't have this belief that like, oh, I have to grow my group to X amount in order to show up and serve, right? Or in order to sell. Like I sold to my group very early on. And it's the same thing now, right? Like my group is big, but I feel like I show up the same way no matter what. And I show up, right? Like I'm present in my group. I am not just concerned about what's going on with me, but I feel like I take a vested interest in what other people are posting. So I feel like maybe that's part of what's contributed to it working for me.
Yeah, I love that. I think the mentality of like showing up and serving is so key. I think that for me, like one of my favorite quotes ever, I'm sure you both have heard me say this 100 times, but like one of the like tenets that I run my business on is like the Rumi saying, open your hands if you want to be held, right? So for me, like that's what community building means. It doesn't mean I just go in there once a day, drop some content and like hope people engage with me and each other and kind of peace out. Like I engage with my group members. Like I want them to feel like it's not Lacey's community, it's our community. Like I let them promote in there. I engage with them. I engage on their posts as much as on mine, because like for me that is actually what community is, right? And so I think when people get tripped up, it's because they forget that it's actually about community and relationships, and they think it's just about talking at people, right? And so I notice like when I'm talking at people, like I get mediocre results at best. When I'm talking with people, like my community thrives. So I think that has been just such a small but significant difference in like why I think that feels like a safe and welcoming place versus like a place where like you're being talked at or where there's like a lot of rules. Like I'm a fan of like putting your own boundaries in your group, but like there's also a point where like if I have to read the rules every single time I'm going to post in your group because like they're so complicated or specific, like there becomes a point where it doesn't even feel like community anymore and it doesn't feel safe. And so I think that's another piece too. Like you can make it simple and you can create relationships with people. Like you don't have to worry about it being totally spammy because it becomes a community, not like a page, right?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, I love that. And so I'd love to hear how you guys are, do you do specific things to cultivate that kind of community? Like, are there certain actions or tips around engaging that make groups work? Because I totally agree. I think the groups that feel weird and spammy are the ones where people are just talking at each other, even with the leader. And I know that that's my default mode as well. It's just like, here's my thing, you know? And so I'm sure that a lot of people are doing that. They're stepping into a Facebook group and whether it's their own or someone else's, and they're thinking, you know, I'm just supposed to post here once a day or 3 times a day, and that's how I'm supposed to get all of these people into different things, whether that's an offer or their own group or their email list or whatever. But you two are very good at, like you said, engaging in your groups, and I think that's been really important in creating that type of community that does work for all of you. And so I'm curious if there are any specific things, and you guys mentioned a couple of things, but anything specific that you feel like you do to really cultivate that?
Totally. I feel like, well, several things, but the first is just that basic thing that Lacey was talking about, which is like having a conversation, right? So when you are doing a live stream or when you are posting, you're like inviting people to respond back and letting them know like, hey, I care about what you have to say. Like, I want this to be a conversation. I want to get to know you. And also like when other people taking the initiative. And I think about this with like in-person relationship building, right? Like usually when we meet someone for the first time, we don't like start talking about ourselves, hopefully. We say like, hey, like, what's your name? Where do you work? What do you do? Oh, that's cool. Where did you grow up? Like, we ask questions about the other person first, right? And we can't always do that in our business, but we can sometimes, right? We can invite people to introduce themselves. We can say, hey, share your business links. Share about your business. I want to get to know you and what you're about, which for like people like us who are heart-centered, right? Like that comes naturally in person. So it's just remembering online that it's the same way, that it actually serves us. We actually can make more sales if we care like we actually do.
Love it. Yeah, I would say like definitely, you know, the engaging on other people's stuff piece, because here's the thing, like, yes, just because you want to and because you're a person that cares about people, and Facebook is smart. Like they know, like they want to drive authentic engagement. They are literally filtering for that constantly. So they're not going to present my stuff to people that I'm never interacting with. So it's like smart on two levels, right? It's like super strategic to engage because literally Facebook favors that right now. Like when you're being authentic, they have built a very beautifully smart system that notices and rewards you for that. And they have done that because that is what they want, is authentic engagement. And so like it goes both ways. Like it is both very strategic and very like heart-centered and smart, like Anna said too, right? So I think that like there's a way where you get to always be both. Like you get to be doing like the right things that help you grow, and you get to be doing it not to grow, but just because you want to connect with your people, right? And so whatever way feels good for you, like I write a lot of content in my group. I could probably do more live streams, right? But like, or you might be the opposite, but like what feels good for you, because that's what's going to keep you showing up. Like Anna and I both said, we showed up, we worked it, we were consistent. So like, that's what matters. It's just like, how do you find that way that feels good for you to do that so that you want to keep showing up? Like throw out all the things you should do and figure out like what way would feel good for you to consistently engage with your tribe and your community, and then like go do that, right? And it gets easier and easier and easier from there.
So if someone is thinking about opening a group, or they're going, maybe a group that I have like isn't necessarily where I want to keep focusing, what advice do you have for them in making that decision? Like how can they evaluate whether or not this is something that they want in their business, or even something that would benefit in their business?
I think for me, and it goes back to that same thing I was saying about like if my Facebook group got shut down, would I open it again? Like I think people have to ask themselves if, and of course, like yes, we want the long-term strategy. It's super important. But if they're willing to show up and have a group of 40 people, of 10 people, and show up there and serve and also sell, if they're willing to do that, I think it's a great strategy, right? If they're able to get, pending that their business has, they're able to get their ideal clients into the group, right? Like that's important, that's fitting with your business model and with your ideal clients. But if that's something that, I mean, and it's really like, is that the strategy you want to do? If not, totally fine. But like, does that sound exciting to you to be in a virtual room with 10 people? Are you willing to show up for that? Then I would say give it a try.
So true. I think that's so true that you said like the point about 10 too, right? Because it's like, if you're not willing to do it for 10, you probably don't want to do it. So that's like a really good filtering question, right? I think the other thing too is like, here's the thing, like what you're not going to get out of in your business is building relationships. So like, let's just put that on the table, right? So if you want to do that, and like you have a multitude of platforms to do that through, I personally think there is nothing that matches the way that you can engage with a Facebook group as far as like community and conversation. Like I don't believe that there's another platform out there that works as well as that right now, but that's like for me, right? So that's like really important to remember. And like what you don't get to do is like decide, well, you can, it's just not going to work out very well, but like decide just to not build relationships, period. So like, Kate, in closing down your group, you were able to focus your energy and doing it in other ways that like served you really well and felt super good. What you didn't get to do was bow out of that whole thing altogether, right? You're still doing that constantly. So I think like, it's just like figure out the platform and the medium that you want to build relationships in and that you like being in relationships in, and like go from there. Like maybe it's all in person, maybe it's on Instagram, whatever. You can do it any way that feels good for you. But like, don't think that like by Facebook groups dying or whatever, like the message is out there that like it means community and relationships don't matter, because they matter more than ever.
I love that. I think it's so true that it doesn't matter. It almost doesn't matter whether it's Facebook groups or any other platform. It really is about community and connection and relationships. Like you said, it's because honestly, you're doing business with people no matter what you're doing. And so any way that you build relationships, facilitate connection between yourself or between other people is so powerful. So you just have to pick the ways that are most I don't want to say the word comfortable, because I think sometimes we think that it should be easy, but I think there should be a certain comfort level, a certain strengths level that you bring to it, and even like an awareness of your market, right? I think that's another part too, is that there is a certain level of entrepreneur who are in these groups all the time. If that's where you're working, there is a certain type of like health nut that are in these groups, and moms that are in these groups, depending on what it looks like for you. And so I think it's just a matter of like picking something and like being committed to showing up there and making those connections, because that's how we build businesses no matter what it looks like.
I think that's such an important thing you said too, Kate, which is like the commitment piece, because I think that's where people get tripped up too, is they think like they have to be on all the platforms. And I think that's when a group, for example, feels overwhelming, because you're also trying to be on Instagram and Twitter and Pinterest and this and that and this and that. And then you're like, oh, and now I have to go pour into all these people in this group. This is crazy, right? But like, what you don't have to do is build your community on a ton of platforms. Like if you go all in on one or two, like that's when you're going to see the magic, because you actually get to pour in and it actually feels like it's pouring back into you.
Mm-hmm. I love that. I would add too, like the same thing with content, right? Like wherever you're writing content for, being able to like let Facebook groups be a part of that. So if you're writing for your group, repurposing it to your blog. If you're writing for your blog, repurposing it to your group, right? Like allowing it to, and I like so many people I talk to are like scared to death to let anything appear twice. But I don't know about you, but like when I'm on Facebook or any sort of platform, I'm not seeing everything from everyone. So I think it's giving yourself permission to like make it easier on yourself and not like make it, I don't know, maybe this is a bad thing to admit, but like sometimes in my Facebook group, I plan and write in advance. Sometimes I write day to day. Sometimes I don't write that day, but I like engage on other people's content. I will say that almost every day I show up in my group to some level, but it really looks different depending on the season that I'm in, and just like kind of the phase I'm in my business.
So is there a point, and maybe you haven't totally thought about this, but what do you think would make you shut down your group? Like, what is it? Is there a threshold or, a certain thing? Granted, this is a lot of conjecture, and who even knows what's going to happen with Facebook and how they control things. But I imagine that in all of this hubbub about all of this, that you guys have at least thought about, like, what would it look like? At what point would it feel like too much to have a group or the wrong thing to have a group? What do you think that is for you? Or what are some of the considerations that you're thinking about as you evaluate the future of your group or others?
You want me to go, Anna? Oh, okay.
Oh, no, sorry. Oh, that's right. I thought I'll go first. For me, it's just like what everything else in my business is like. Is it a smart business move? AKA, is it like making me money? Like, is it contributing to my business being profitable and making an impact, right? Like, am I fulfilling my why in my business? Is it helping me do that? And is it helping me bring in income? so I think that's the time when it wouldn't. Like, for example, if I had to have so many staff members, like if I felt like I wasn't able to be present in my community for whatever reason, then that might be a reason why I would shut it down.
Yeah, I think that, sometimes what happens is we see someone that we like love or look up to and respect do something, and then we make like a lot of inferences, right? Like you mentioned, Kate, and like some of the promos to this, like the big groups that have shut down and whatever. Like, well, for me, like that's a different discussion. Like shutting down a group of 70,000 people is a totally different discussion than like shutting down a group of 1,000 people. Like we're literally talking apples and oranges at that point, right? So like, do I ever plan on running a community of 70,000? I really don't at this point, because I feel like Anna said, like, there's not a path that I see for that being like a great return on investment and like a way for me to build authentic relationships in the way that I desire to. However, there's also something to be said for the fact that anybody that has had a group that big and is shutting it down are doing one of two things. They're either moving to a different platform or they're opening a different group, right? So like that's super important. And I believe like in that trajectory, in the sense that like either one, they have enough credibility to move their people to another platform because they have put in the work. They have worked that group enough that their people are moving with them, or they've decided to like rebuild a community in a different way. But like none of those people are taking community off the table, right? So for me, it would just be like, is there a point where a different platform serves my desire for relationships and connection? And if and when that happens, like that's when I would make a move.
I think that's a great point, because I think that's something that's not being talked about in the whole discussion, is that it's not just that these people are shutting down their groups, they are shifting and still keeping community as a key part of their business. They're just doing it in a different place in a different way. So it's more of a judgment maybe of the medium than it is of the idea itself, right?
Totally.
Which is interesting, because Facebook is definitely putting more emphasis on groups, and I feel like that happened I feel like that almost happened at the same time. People were starting to shut down groups, and then Facebook's like, oh, look at all these things that we're going to unveil for groups. And so I think they're also sort of seeing how that's affecting some of the different things that may be happening. So I'm curious.
I think that like there's like a way where like Facebook shifts before they tell us they're shifting, if that makes sense, right? Like, so they've been like changing group algorithms for a while. And then what happens is like people freak out and respond quite quickly. And I'm not saying that about the big groups. Like I think they had very strategic and targeted reasons for doing that. But I mean, like in some smaller settings, like we react too quickly before we give it the chance to play out. Like they are very much in the game of changing groups right now, and like we're watching that strategy play out before us. It hasn't, like, we're not at the completion point of that, right?
Yeah, that's great. So I want to open it up for questions. So if anybody has questions about Facebook groups or running Facebook groups, or even just building community in general, these ladies are awesome at that, and we can definitely shift into that kind of conversation, answering your questions. So I think, though, what we've landed on is that whether or not it's Facebook groups or something else, that community and connections that are genuine and authentic are going to win the day no matter where that is. For some people, that's Instagram. For some people, that's email lists. For some people, that's all sorts of different things. But the point is that you need to be fostering that in your business, especially in a business that's more one-to-one or one to a few. You really need to have those key relationships developed. And so I'm curious to hear what you guys think. If you had predictions about what Facebook groups are going to be doing or looking like, say, a year from now, what would you say that would be?
That's a great question. My guess / we kind of all know, right? They're working towards like monetizing them more and more, because we have insights now, right? They want to let you know, oh, this many people saw your post. So probably what's going to come next is, would you like double of that to see your post, right? For this much money, kind of like business pages, right? Like Lacey drew that correlation. So my guess is that there will still be some organic reach, but probably there will be more options to pay and advertise to your own group. But beyond that, I don't know. I also think that they will continue to add new features. Like, that's my guess. That's not based on anything. But since it is something that they are incentivizing people towards, I'm guessing that they'll have some like fun new features, maybe around like threads, but that's just like pure hypothesis.
Yeah, I totally agree with Anna. Like, I think we can see the trajectory to a certain extent, and we can make some inferences, right? Like, so here's what I think is that we're going to be able to run ads to groups, and they're going to be super freaking cheap at first, because that's what Facebook does when they're incentivizing something, right? So, like, right now, most people are getting, more expensive conversions than ever on their business pages, which is just natural, right? With the trend of the industry and the fact that ads are bigger than ever. I think group ads are going to be really cheap at first. And I think they're going to be a super smart move in your business. And I think there's a way where, like, if you've built up a Facebook group, it's going to be more valuable than ever, actually, because in many ways, like, we've all poured into these communities that we can't even do paid advertising or targeting to in any way. Like, it has been purely organic. And, like, part of my heart loves that, and it's kind of sad to see that go. And then another part of me is like, I'm so glad I poured into this platform, because I see it being something that is going to serve me for a long time to come, and I can see how I'm going to get to play up all these new features, but I have this super solid foundation on which to do that, right?
I love that. What do you think are some of the, or how have you been enjoying or using the new features that they've rolled out to your groups? Like, what is that? How has that helped you in managing your groups?
Yeah.
Oh no!
I still don't have insights. I'm just like living vicariously through others. I'll let you keep going.
Yeah, I would say I don't feel like I'm doing anything different. Maybe I am a little, but like at the end of the day, it's like, oh, cool, like this many people saw my post, but I'm still going to show up and do me. Like, if I saw something crazy, like, well, I think mine showed like most people, most views are on Wednesdays, right, in my group. But I'm still going to show up on all the other, like, nothing has been compelling enough where I really changed anything, but it's nice to have it. It's nice to, and more, I think what I'm excited about is that Facebook is putting energy towards groups. If that makes sense, which means they're potentially going to be like revealing more things in the coming months, right? And the potential to be able to reach the people with paid advertising that, like, paid advertising isn't something I've really leaned into in my business, but it's something I am working on more behind the scenes because of this coming up, because I know, oh, I could reach people that already connect with me. I already know that I connect well with them. Like, I like working with people that have already known me for a little bit, because I know we'd be a good, like, I know that they know what they're getting. So I don't know that it's like massively changed any of my strategy though.
Yeah. Oh man, I had another question, but it totally left me. I hate when that happens. Okay, well, maybe if it shows up, it shows up. We haven't had any other questions. People have really just been enjoying, some people have made connections and are joining other people's groups based on our discussion. So, way to go, Bree and Maggie, showing us how community is done already. Everyone has said, like, this has been really valuable for them just to hear what's happening, and yes, they love using Facebook groups for for relationships, and that it's been a very informative live stream. So I love that people are jumping in there. Oh, I know what I was going to ask. So a lot of people do focus on growing their Facebook groups, which is really important. But I know that you all also grow other things alongside that, whether that's an Instagram following, especially an email list and stuff like that. What advice do you have for people in managing or balancing those things for the sustainability and future of their businesses?
Yeah, I think growing your email list is super important, no matter what platform you have, right? So if you are focusing on Pinterest or Instagram or Facebook groups, that you're growing your email list to, because that's like the thing we can't lose, right? Like that's the like non-negotiable thing that we all should be doing in our business, at least for now, right? Until like email goes out of date. I heard someone the other day saying, you know, this certain, I think it was like Facebook, we just need to focus on like, oh, Facebook bots, right? Like Facebook bots are more powerful than your email list. And I'm like maybe in their reach right now, but I kind of like you were alluding to, Kate, really believe that it's important to build your list alongside your social platform.
Yeah, I totally agree. Like, I think that they all feed into each other, and like that's when you win and don't find yourself overwhelmed, right? Is like when you're using them to work together and not separately. So for example, like Anna had said earlier, like repurpose this to your blog or blog to this or whatever. Like I think that's an important piece of this, is like know your focus and then repurpose from there. So like for me, my focus is like my newsletter or my email list, right? And like my Facebook group. So like those are the only things I create content for. Every other platform I'm on is repurposed content from that purpose. Does that make sense? Right? So like that's how you get non-overwhelmed and like actually building on multiple platforms, is you pick your focus and then you like move it to other places instead of being like I never am ever asking myself, what am I writing for Instagram this week? Because like ain't nobody got time for that. Like I have like one thing that I need to be able to write for, and like then I need to be able to move it other places. So like decide what your focus is, whether that's your group or totally different platform, or it is Instagram for you. It doesn't matter, but like when you know your focus, everything gets easier.
I think that's so true. I do the same thing. I write a blog post first, and then from there, everything sort of spirals out and breaks down so that it's really easy to manage, and I'm being consistent across all my channels and talking about the same stuff. And I also think like this whole discussion almost underscores the point of having an email list someplace that you own, right? Because we don't know, we can guess at what Facebook's going to do next, but there could be a point at which, you know, in the next year, because they're rolling out advertising features, that you get zero reach within your own Facebook group, you know, because nobody's there looking at your stuff, or you're not paying Facebook because it's linked to your page or whatever to actually change anything. And so you end up, you know, then having to pay to play for your own thing, and you lose almost not all the value that you built there. Because again, it is about the actual connections that you build. But I think that's why it's important to definitely adapt with the platforms that you're on, but also have a place that's yours, so that you can continue, so that no matter what happens everywhere else, that you have your home base to which you can count on people being there. Whether they open or not, there's lots of different, you know, tactics and things to help with that. But it's really being sure that you're not putting your business future in somebody else's hands.
Totally. I think it's also about having like organic and paid reach, right? Mm-hmm. So like that's so important too, is like you want to have both as an option. Like I never want organic reach to be a non-option for me in some way, shape, or form. But at the same time, like we have to realize that like we, you know, got in when Facebook was a baby, right? And it's going to keep growing, and so is every other platform, and continue to monetize and continue to be about paid reach. So like I think it's time for us to get comfortable with doing both always, right?
I would say too, something that came up for me as you were saying that too, Kate, for me it's like, how can I show up in this season fully for my people and be available to the idea that maybe that'll look different in the next season, right? So like we shouldn't be building our Facebook groups with like, I'm gonna grow it giant so that in 2018, like hopefully we're selling and our groups are we're supporting our groups are supporting us back like now, right? Mm-hmm. And not that it's that I don't want to have a group next year, but I'm okay if I don't, because I truly believe like in addition to building my email list, like I'm building like I guess in the email list, but like I'm building followers and a tribe and a platform and really, really authentic relationships that are going to carry with me. So it's like, not that I don't care, but it's like I'm present for what it is in this season.
I love that. Yeah, so much good wisdom being shared. So thank you, ladies, for joining me for this discussion. I know that it's been on a lot of people's lips, and so I'm really glad that we got to sit here and hash out some of those things and talk about what's working, what's not working, and how Facebook groups may or may not support people going forward in their businesses. So thank you for joining me, and thank y'all for joining us. Of course, if you have other questions or anything, feel free to comment here. We always like to show back up and answer any questions, or tag a specific one of us if you have questions. We would love just to support you, even as you're figuring out what this looks like for you and your business in this season. So thanks for joining us, and y'all have a wonderful weekend.
Bye. Thank you.
Bye.